Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. Yes, yes. So it's a little chilly in here, so we're going to have you guys stand up. We're going to get you warmed up a little bit with our first song. It's called Fire. That's not how I feel in here, all right? I got a fire. I got a fire burning, burning inside of me. Oh, I got a fire. I got a fire burning, burning inside of me. Your presence is my passion, and with one gaze you set me ablaze with your fire. Spirit and fire. Oh, yeah, yeah. Sing, I got a fire. I got a fire. I got a fire burning, burning inside of me. Oh, I got a fire. I got a fire burning, burning inside of me. Your presence is my passion, and with one gaze you set me ablaze with your fire. Fire, fire, ever burning, all consuming fire. Spirit and fire. Oh, yeah, yeah. In your presence, when I'm at your throne, it's like fire. Shut up in my bones, you're the one that I desire. You're the all-consuming fire. In your presence, when I'm at your throne, it's like fire. Shut up in my bones, you're the one that I desire. You're the all-consuming fire. In your presence, when I'm at your throne, it's like fire. Shut up in my bones, you're the one that I desire. You're the all-consuming fire. In your presence, when I'm at your throne, it's like fire, Lord. Shut up in my bones, you're the one that I desire. You're the all-consuming fire. Oh, shut up in my bones, you're the one that I desire. You're the all-consuming fire. In your presence, when I'm at your throne, it's like fire. Shut up in my bones, you're the one that I desire. You're the all-consuming fire. In your presence, when I'm at your throne, it's like fire. Shut up in my bones, you're the one that I desire. You're the all-consuming fire. Fire, 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 ever burning, all-consuming fire. Fire, fire, you baptize me with your spirit and fire.
You can be seated if you're warm. Can we get sound on the last mic?
Sin around me, pressure's on me, pain is in me, but I gotta keep looking up. Tears are streaming, heart is beating, keep believing, but I gotta keep looking. Some may trust in hopeless and charity, but I oh, I will not fear. And some may say that they've found another way, but I keep my eyes on you. Oh, I will not move from the hills, the hills, the hills. The hills, the hills, the hills.
On the hill there's a cross. On the cross there is blood for me, for me. On the hill there's a cross. On the cross there is blood for me, for me. On the hill there's a cross. On the cross there is blood for me, for me. On the hill there's a cross. On the cross there is blood for me, for me. On the hill there's a cross. On the cross there is blood for me, for me. On the hill there's a cross. On the cross there is blood for me, for me. Thank you for your blood, Jesus. Thank you for your blood, Jesus. Thank you for your blood. Nothing can wipe away, nothing but the blood. Oh precious, oh precious, oh precious is that blood on the hill. Hey. On the hill there's a cross. On the cross there is blood for Jesus. Nothing but the blood of Jesus on the hill. On the hill there's a cross. On the cross there is blood for me. Oh, sing on the hill. On the hill there's a cross. On the cross there is blood for me. For me. That's on the hill there's a cross. On the cross there is blood for me, for me. He still has the power, the wonderful power to heal our diseases and cover our weakness. It still has the power, the wonderful power to heal our diseases and to cover our weakness. It still has the power, the wonderful power to heal our diseases, to cover our weakness. It still has the power, the wonderful power to heal our diseases, to cover our weakness. It still has the power, the wonderful power to heal our diseases. diseases, to cover our weakness. Oh, 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 still has the power, the wonderful power to heal our diseases, to cover our weakness. It still has the power, the wonderful power to heal our diseases, to cover our weakness. On the hill there's a cross, on the cross there is blood for me, for me. On the hill there's a cross, on the cross there is blood for me, for me. The cross don't discriminate. The cross don't discriminate, no.
But there is blood for you.
The cross don't discriminate. The cross don't discriminate. The cross don't discriminate, no.
But there is blood for you.
The cross don't discriminate. The cross don't discriminate, no. The cross don't discriminate, no.
There is blood for you.
The cross don't discriminate. The cross don't discriminate. The cross don't discriminate, no. On the hill there's a cross. On the cross there is blood for me. For me. On the hill there's a cross. On the cross there is blood for me, for me.
I don't know about y'all, but I felt a chill down my spine, and I don't think it's from that cold weather, though. First of all, I'd like to say thank y'all for coming out today due to the weather. I know it's cold, but we appreciate y'all really being here. Welcome to the 12th annual MLK Celebration Convocation. We're so happy to have y'all here. I'm Teddy.
And I'm Charlotte Maeda.
And we're your co-hosts for the 12th annual Convocation today.
Okay, Teddy. You want to do an extra things?
Huh?
You want to do an extra things?
Yeah, I got that. All right. First of all, I would love for y'all to give a round of applause to our beautiful performers, y'all. Come on, let's give it to them. Come on, y'all, that ain't loud enough. Come on, now. All right. And can we give another round of applause, a special one for Rebecca Evans for organizing that. We really appreciate you. All right, I'm going to turn it over to my lovely co-host, Miss Charlotte.
I'm so nervous. Okay. Once again, welcome everyone. I would like to thank you all for attending the 12th Annual Martin Luther King Jr. Day celebration. This afternoon, we have come together to commemorate the life of a man who advocated for justice and equality, not only for African Americans, but also for people of all backgrounds. Dr. King's vision is upheld in the work the Office of Intercultural Affairs does for the campus and community. As an office, we strive to promote representation for all groups on campus and recognize the progress we as a society have made since the civil rights movement. In the past year, we have worked hard to bring awareness about privilege to students through the Segregated Bathrooms event and have had screenings of films that have reflected on hardships of minorities and their struggles. In the year and a half that I've worked for this office, I've learned so much more about what it means to be a minority. As a child, I remember learning about Dr. King in school and thinking about how progressive America was. Little did I know, my grandfather had moved to California to escape a society that treated people differently, solely based on skin color. As I stand here today, I think of all the people who have advocated for the same things Dr. King wanted only 50 years ago. I think of how we've advanced, but still have a lot of work to do. And I think of the legacy Dr. King left behind and how it is carried on in the voices and actions of a new generation of activists. Though we have made gains, much remains to be done to carry on Dr. King's legacy. He has left us with a blueprint for change, and we are the generation to make that change and carry out his dream.
Thank you, Charlotte, for those wise and strong words. Can y'all please give her another round of applause for that? Now, this is my pleasure to welcome to the stage Beloit College own president, Mr. Scott Bierman.
Yeah, good job.
So as our students were singing, I was watching for who was filming via their cell phones the singing, because I knew that it was likely going to be a couple of parents. So I think we should recognize, the parents of all of these fantastic students that you've already had a chance to see. And I know at least Caleb's parents are sitting right in front over here. So thank you so much. Welcome. So I add my appreciation for braving this chilly Wisconsin afternoon to join us here at Beloit College to celebrate the life, the work, and the spirit of Martin Luther King. I was looking back over my remarks from my first Martin Luther King Day convocation at Beloit College in 2010. The essence of those remarks were to strongly recommend a short 2-item reading list. 1, an essay by James Baldwin titled "The Fire Next Time." And 2, Martin Luther King's letter from a Birmingham jail. I argued that being a 21st century citizen required that you come to understand these 2 texts, both from 1963, and I argued that much of the essence of Beloit College, as we aspire for it to be, was captured in the challenges issued by both James Baldwin and Martin Luther King. Frankly, it was a brilliant talk. So here is what I am pretty sure is true. My recommended reading list was not taken up by a single person listening to my remarks. I was uselessly brilliant. People listened pretty intently and they politely applauded when I was done, but I think my remarks were utterly and completely ineffective. And that was too bad, because my short little reading list is actually really important. And as important as I thought it was in 2010, I have come to believe that it is even more important in 2016. So I am going to try again. But this time, I'm going to try and align the incentives better. The fact of the matter was that when I made my reading list 6 years ago, not a single grade was hanging in the balance. So, listen up. First, what I said nearly exactly 6 years ago, I reiterate today: you simply can't understand the last six months sufficiently the last 60 years sufficiently, and you will not understand America's next 6 months sufficiently, nor will you participate in America's future over the next 60 years sufficiently if you do not read these two pieces. So, because of that, I am hereby, and you have received, a short syllabus for a new course I am offering. Well, more than offering, by being here today, you are enrolled in this course. It is called A Good Start Towards Being an Effective 21st Century Citizen. The reading list for this course is, you guessed it, James Baldwin's The Fire Next Time and Martin Luther King Jr.'s Letter from a Birmingham Jail. But incentives matter. If you do this reading, really do this reading, and send me a note to that effect with your name and some sort of return address, I will send you an official grade of A for this exercise. We all like getting A's. This is your chance to do so. It is as simple as that. I mean it. I will send you a certificate that codifies your completion with distinction in this course. If you want extra credit, then you should read Ta-Nehisi Coates' relatively new book, Between the World and Me, and you will see the influence of James Baldwin all over this book. And you should read Blind Spot, Hidden Biases of Good People by Mazrin Banaji and Anthony Greenwald. If you complete these two readings, plus the other two, you will receive an A+, and I will put some gold-colored trim on the margins of your little diploma. If you do none of this reading, you will fail this course. Now, I will not send you anything saying you have failed this course, because that could get the college sued. But you will know you failed, and I will know you failed. I am glad you are here, and so glad you have enrolled in my new course. I'm particularly honored to be sharing the stage with Teddy and Charlotte, and of course, our good friend, Rick Daniels. I look forward to giving everyone in the room either an A or an A+. And let me turn over the podium to Teddy, who will introduce Rick Daniels. It's all yours.
I don't know about y'all, but I just love hearing Scott Bierman talk. I enjoy every bit of it. Still waiting on those socks, though, from orientation. I never forgot. I'm still waiting on those socks. All right. To move on to our keynote speaker, Mr. Rick Daniels. He's an educator, a scholar, an advocate for higher learning, and a dean at Rock Valley College in Rockford, Illinois. He has a huge role in his community. And if you guys can just help me, welcome him to the stage with a warm round of applause. Rick Daniels.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Wow. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak at such a wonderful and fitting occasion. I'm not just honored to be here at Beloit, but also honored to be here on this occasion. And I am at heart a public speaker. So anytime I have the opportunity to speak, I always make it my business to show public gratitude. And I am grateful to be here today. So thank you to everyone for your attendance and for your time. And you could have found somebody else to do this. But for some reason or another, you thought that person should be me. There are more than enough people who are more than qualified to talk on this particular occasion and subjects related to this occasion, but I'm here today, and for that I am grateful. So to the college, to President Bierman, thank you for your personal invitation, to the faculty and staff, and of course the students who are the lifeblood of everything that we do in higher education. Thank you for your time as well. I do shout outs, and I'd like to give one to Emmanuel Baptist Church, because I see quite a few of the saints in the house. That's all right. My pastors are here. Pastor Kevin L. Pullum, Sister Latanya Pullum, they are here as well. And I'd also like to announce that my family is here with me today. I have a wonderful family, my wife Erica, and my 4 beautiful babies, Christian, Madison, Morgan, and Chloe. And we are a tribe called Daniels. And I have a wonderful extended family as well who is here, and they show us such great support. And without them, we wouldn't be able to live the lives that we live. I am married to an outstanding woman, and many of you know who she is, Erica. And that's right. I think it's fair to say that I wouldn't be where I am, but most importantly, I wouldn't be who I am without her. And I can call her a lot of good things, but God told me to call her my wife. And I've been calling her that for 5 years. So thank you, sweetheart, for everything that you do. And finally, I'd like to thank all of you, each of you, individually, for making the effort to be here today. It is cold outside. I'm not going to act like it's not. But I appreciate you all for being here, for making the individual effort to be here and to give your time to this wonderful occasion. So to all of you in the room individually, those who are involved in the college and those who are not, I would like to say thank you. I have a dream. It was an amazing speech. But we are not going to talk much about that speech today. And in respect to Dr. King's famous speech and the moment of time that it owns, perhaps I should tell you why. The reason I don't plan on talking much about that speech today is because, quite frankly, we hear it every year. Every year around this time, we hear multiple renditions and references to the I Have a Dream speech. And it is no doubt a wonderful speech. In fact, my particular favorite part is when Dr. King reaches the climax of his speech and he begins to reiterate his dream, and he keeps saying, I have a dream, I have a dream. You go back and read the original transcript, you'll find that that particular part of the speech wasn't written. And Dr. King didn't ad-lib. He didn't come up with it off the top of his head. It was a spiritual occurrence. It was flowing out of him. In the church, we say he felt his help coming on. And so in that moment, he was able to successfully pull on the heartstrings of so many people. And as a result, the speech was a hit. It was famous. It was made famous, and is still very much famous to this day. But because of that, it has become paperclipped to the folder of the Black experience in this country. And because of that, somehow, when we take the shortest month of the year to celebrate that experience, that becomes the audio soundbite to our struggle. And I just don't think that's fair to Dr. King. I don't think that's fair to his work, to his life, and to the blood, sweat, and tears that he put into the civil rights movement and to fighting for equal rights. So today I'd like to talk from a different speech that King did. It's called The Three Evils of Society, where he talks about racism, capitalism, and militarism being the three evils that will one day ruin this great civilization of ours. But this isn't even about a speech for that matter.
The title of this talk is From Moments to Movements, examining the fight for civil rights in the 21st century, examining the fight for civil rights in the new millennium. And this is an attempt to make a comparative analysis of modern-day social movements to movements of the past, particularly the civil rights movement and the Black Lives Matter movement. Now, I know many of you are out there thinking, well, you can't compare the two. Sure you can. You'll find that there are many differences between both movements, but there are quite a few similarities as well. But the goal here is not to create disdain between those who have studied the civil rights movement and those who have not quite yet studied the Black Lives Matter movement. But the reason why I think this comparison is important is because many of us, myself included, around this time of year, we have a tendency to sanitize the civil rights movement and then turn around and demonize the Black Lives Matter movement. And so we refer to the men and women who were involved in the civil rights movement, and we call those people heroes. We say, yo, well, look at them. Those men and women, well, they were heroes. They sang, they marched, they didn't even fight back. We look at those young men and women who are involved in the Black Lives Matter movement, and we refer to them as thugs. And so I think it's important for us to take a look at how these two movements correlate, because I don't think it's possible for anybody to truly appreciate what happened in Birmingham, but then at least not try to understand what took place in Baltimore. I don't think it's possible for anyone to have sorrow for what took place in Selma, but then lack compassion for what took place outside of St. Louis. I don't understand how anybody can be moved to tears at the bombing of a church that killed 4 little girls, then lack that same emotion for 9 people who were gunned down in cold blood at a church in South Carolina. So the attempt today is not to compare the differences or the similarities. The attempt here is to talk a little bit about both, in hopes that we can all begin to see the human element in the fight for civil rights that's happening right now. There's a few things I'd like for you to know about me before I begin, and a few things I'd like for you to know about this presentation. Number one, I'm not an expert in the area of social movements. I'm not an expert in the area of race, and I don't ever want to reach that level, and I'll tell you why shortly. And if you take a look at my high school transcripts and even some of my college semester transcripts, you'll agree, in the words of Jay-Z, that I'm far from a Harvard student. But I've been a black man in this country for about 30 years now. And I think that qualifies me to talk, if only briefly, about my experiences with race in this country. And as far as this program goes, I think it's at least fair to give you a heads up and let you know that we will be discussing race. Both movements are rooted and interconnected into the psychology of race. And the reason why I don't want to become an expert in the area of racism is because the concept of racism as an idea, as an ideology, it evolves with time. And so we don't even have to talk about how racism has evolved in the last 50 years. We can talk about how racism has evolved in just the last 5, the last 10 years. Since the year 2000. Subsequently, in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years from now, we'll see that racism will look completely different. The problem is that there seems to be a lack of understanding about the individual and institutional elements of racism. The individual element of racism means that you, of course, as an individual, practice racist psychology in every area of your life. You live it, you believe it, you practice it. It's not just the joke that you made or laughed at. It's not a bias that you have. It's a practice in your everyday life. Institutional racism, on the other hand, is a little bit different. It's where the psychology of racism is embedded in the institutions that we are involved in. Our homes, our schools, our churches, the community organizations that we're involved in, and how those organizations, schools, institutions, and churches and homes provide opportunities for those who are not like us. But the problem is that too many of us have become upset at the individual acts of racism, and not enough outrage is directed at the institutional racism that has much more damaging effects. It's just like the great brother Malcolm X said, and I will quote X today, just as we compare Malcolm and Martin, just as easily as we compare Kobe to Michael. We'll talk a little bit about what X had to say as well. Malcolm X says, it isn't the American white man who was racist, but it's the American political, economical, and social atmosphere that automatically nourishes a racist psychology within the white man. And if you are uncomfortable talking about race, then I, on behalf of all of my brothers and sisters in the room, would like to say, welcome to the club. Racism ain't supposed to be comfortable for you to talk about. And so, comfort, of course, being the enemy of achievement, if we're ever going to achieve a post-racial society, if that's really our goal, if we're ever going to achieve some of the goals that we have, we've got to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And so there's a shared experience that each movement has. And I think that if we rely more on the shared experiences and seek knowledge and wisdom in the places that have them, that we can engage in the kinds of conversations that lead to the kinds of actions that ultimately change the world. And so today I want you to remember one theme. Don't just connect to a moment, commit to a movement. Don't just connect to a moment, commit to a movement. There's a difference between moments and movements. The difference is this: moments raise awareness, movements inspire action. And I think it's important that every one of us, in all of the different moments that we see that happen in our nation, those that make the headlines and those that do not, it's important that we don't get caught up in the moment. And that happens sometimes, especially in this age of Twitter activism. I'm guilty of this myself. When something happens that makes headlines, because quite a few things happen that don't, but when something happens that makes headlines, we get emotional about it. As we get so emotional, we get on Facebook, Twitter, or Snapchat, or whatever your preferred social medium is, and we start posting about it. And then we post about it, and somebody likes it or dislikes it, and they go and argue with us about it, and we leave, and we feel this false sense of empowerment because we expressed ourselves. But as the months, weeks, and years roll by, that moment eventually fades from our consciousness. And then somehow or another, it's brought back to that consciousness. We're reminded of it somehow. And then we say to ourselves, you know what, yeah, that's right. Trayvon Martin sure did get gunned down, didn't he? Whatever happened with that Sandra Bland case? They ever fix that up? That's what happens when you connect to a moment and not a movement. And so as King said, some people are more outraged by certain events than by the system of inequality that produced those events. And so if you are more outraged by the burning of a CVS store than by the fact that 63% of Baltimore's population is black, yet 24% of that 63% are standing in the unemployment line, then I think you have the wrong idea. If you are more outraged by the burning of a drugstore than you are by a drug-infested community, then I think you have the wrong idea. And so I say again, don't just connect to a moment, commit to a movement. And so I will attempt to compare both moments, and I'm the son of a preacher, and they only gave me 20 to 25 minutes, y'all. So I'm going to try to do this, all right? I will attempt to compare both movements. He said, take your time. We are in the chapel. I will attempt to compare both movements in three different areas. I want to talk about the rhetoric, the politics, and the music. The rhetoric, the politics, and the music. The rhetoric, of course, is defined as the art of effective or persuasive speaking or writing, especially the use of figures of speech or other compositional techniques. It is also defined as language designed to have a persuasive or impressive effect on its audience. The rhetoric of the civil rights movement was power for the people. The rhetoric for the Black Lives Matter movement is power to the people. And the civil rights movement used religious testimony, the usage of biblical narratives, and the role of the church, which all helped to provide a moral compass to the movement, which of course was designed and supposed to pull on the morality of those in power. But according to their website, Black Lives Matter is an affirmation for black folks, contributions to this society, our humanity, and our resilience in the face of deadly oppression. It is a unique contribution that goes beyond extrajudicial killings of black people by police. It's not just the civil rights movement, It's a human rights movement. It's the 21st century's version of Black Power. But Black Lives Matter isn't just about the killing of unarmed men and women, just as the civil rights movement wasn't just about the seat at the lunch counter. And it's just like James Baldwin said. Baldwin was a bad boy. If you haven't really gotten into him, I encourage you to. Baldwin said, I don't care who serves me a cup of coffee. I don't want anybody to just serve me lunch. I want humanity. I want respect. And any person with an ounce of human dignity in them, the words Black Lives Matter should not make you uncomfortable. The purpose of Black Lives Matter as a moniker is to evoke emotion. The rhetoric is a little bit more in your face than in the civil rights movement. Think about it. Black Lives Matter is designed to evoke emotion. Sure, they could have called it the National Association of whatever, but they wouldn't have done anything for you. You wouldn't have felt anything. We wouldn't be talking about it right now. But somehow or another, Black Lives Matter makes you feel something. It forces you to have an opinion. And so, as a result of that, we've seen recently white backlash particularly from white people, those who interrupt when people say Black Lives Matter and say, all lives matter. Let's just keep that in mind. But since we're talking about King today, it is King Day, isn't it? Here's what King has to say about white backlash. The white backlash is nothing new. It is a surfacing of old prejudices, hostilities, and ambivalences that have always been there. It was caused neither by the cry of Black Power nor by the unfortunate wave of riots in our cities. The white backlash of today is rooted in the same problem that has characterized America ever since the black man landed in chains on this nation's shores. That's what King said. And I never heard anyone say only Black Lives Matter. I never heard anyone say Black lives are the only lives that matter. But somehow that's what some people take. And for those of you, I will say this. If Black Lives Matter makes you uncomfortable, then it says a little bit more about you than it does about us. So there's a difference in the rhetoric. There's a difference in the rhetoric. One says power for the people, the other says power to the people, but we see a connection between the two movements as they are both centered on the fight against dehumanization. They are both centered in the fight for humanity. Now, politics can be defined in a number of different ways. In fact, I believe if you ask 10 different people to give their definition of politics, you're most likely going to get 10 different answers. But politics in this respect is defined as the activities associated with the governance of a country or other area, especially the debate or conflict among individuals or parties having or hoping to achieve power. Now, the civil rights movement used a politics of respectability. The Black Lives Matter movement uses a politics of empowerment. The civil rights movement said, we want justice. Black Lives Matter said, justice or else. And so in a cover story for The Atlantic, Randall Kennedy states, a politics of respectability suggests that black people act dignified and sophisticated in the presence of white people so that there will be no opportunity to put us in racist, stereotypical categories. It was used as a strategy for the civil rights movement and focused on those whose victimization was clearest and likeliest to elicit the greatest sympathy from whites. In fact, E.D. Nixon, who was a key organizer for the movement, turned down at least two other cases, two other women that could have been in the same seat that Rosa Parks sat in. And contrary to popular belief, Rosa Parks didn't just have a long day at work and decide she wasn't going to get up that day. That was the kickoff to the movement that we know. It was meticulously and strategically planned. And we've got to learn to stop romanticizing the civil rights movement, acting like it was just something that just happened, or they just decided to march. And we have to put more emphasis on the fact that they took long periods of time to come up with something meaningful that would make the movement have structure. And so, of course, while this was respectable at the time, E.D. Nixon said that Rosa was morally clean and reliable, and that's why we should use her. And this was respectable. But in my opinion, it validates the misguided notion that if we just behave, if we just pull up our pants, if we just talk the right way, name our kids the right names, then perhaps we will be treated fairly. Now, I like the politics of respectability because it requires cultural discipline and cultural standards. But I dislike the politics of respectability also because I believe it affirms our inferiority and the unattractiveness of black culture. It causes us to calculate our worth based on someone else's value system. The way of life, this way of life affects everything we do, from where we choose to live, to the clothes we choose to wear, to even the names we choose to give to our children. Talib Kweli, who's a very well-respected MC, he said, funny, people used to give my mama a hard time, now my president is black and his name is as hard as mine. What's in a name? You have to ask yourself, are Emily and Greg really more employable than Lakeisha and Jamal? That was a question posed in a study done in 2003 from the National Bureau of Economic Research. Check this out. Economists wanted to explore racial bias in the job market. They responded to help wanted ads for a variety of positions in the fields of sales, administrative support, clerical, and customer services. Ads were posted in the Boston Globe and Chicago Tribune with fake resumes. The researchers plugged in made-up names on the resumes, which were associated with African names like Lakeisha Washington and Jamal Jones. And they also used fake resumes for white names as well, names like Emily Walsh and Greg Baker, based on naming data for babies born between 74 and 79 in Massachusetts. The results, the resumes with white-sounding names spurred 50% more callbacks than the ones with black-sounding names. After responding to 1,300 ads with more than 5,000 resumes, the researchers found that the job applicants with white names needed to send 10 resumes to get one call back, while the applicants with black names needed to send at least 15. So what's the first thing that comes to your mind when you read a name like Heather Snyder? And what's the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear or read a name like LaQuasia Parks? You see, we like to call these ghetto names. We got to be careful when we use that word. I hate, and I don't hate many things, but I do in fact hate that we use the word ghetto as if it's something terrible, as if it's something bad. When you think about all the wonderful things that have come out of the ghetto, the wonderful people, ideas, places, food, clothes, ideas. So much of what we know, and even some of the slang we use in our mainstream media today came out of the ghetto. But when we use that term, we use it as if it's the lowest of the low. We need to rethink that concept because those ghetto names might be your boss one day. Yeah, it might be State Senator LaQuasia Parks, Executive Vice President LaQuasia Parks, President of Beloit College LaQuasia Parks. It may not sound believable for you now, but when you move from a politics of respectability to a politics of empowerment, your name no longer matters. So we got to be careful how we treat those that we perceive to be ghetto. The bottom line is a politics of respectability tricks us into a poisonous mentality where not even our names are good enough to make it in this country. And the reality is it won't save you. It won't save you. The politics of respectability won't save you. It didn't save Trayvon. It didn't save Eric Garner, who, by the way, politely told the police he couldn't breathe. It didn't even save Dr. King. So what kills me when people say, maybe if they just pulled up their pants, they wouldn't get gunned down. Martin Luther King was shot with a suit on and died broke. Harry Belafonte had to pay for his funeral. So when you think about the politics of respectability, shift it to the politics of empowerment. Now we see a connection here. The politics of each movement is interconnected on the struggle for power. So one group of people, one movement, fought for power in suits and ties, while the other movement is fighting for power in hooded sweatshirts and combat boots. But the overall point here is that no matter what you're wearing, the dialect that you speak, or even what your name is, the struggle for power is what we're fighting for. And in fact, I think it's also safe to say that we shouldn't be afraid of those young black men. And I have to advocate for black men right now because if you haven't noticed, I am one. And I'm raising one. And so when you advocate for black men, you have to consider this. Some of the most shocking atrocities in our nation's history, some of the most violent acts in our nation's history were committed by white men in suits and ties. And I'm finding myself becoming just a little bit more afraid of white men in suits and ties than I am of black men in hoodies and saggy pants. But we shouldn't be afraid at all. And that's what Dr. King wanted to convey. It's the fight for humanity. But don't demean the struggle by making it about culture or clothes. Fight the real enemy, which is the system of inequality and injustice that has plagued our country since this nation's birth. This system of equality was a part of our nation before we even had a name, a flag, or a national anthem. This is what we choose to fight. Finally, I'd like to talk about the music. I'm a music lover, and I believe that music plays an integral part in any social movement. It is the melodic voice of the struggle and can either move someone to act or paralyze them in thought. The soundtrack of the civil rights movement sounded something like "We Shall Overcome." The soundtrack of the Black Lives Matter movement sounded a little bit more like "Fight the Power." Now, "We Shall Overcome" is a timeless classic. And I got to say that my wife and I talk about this all the time. "We Shall Overcome" is a timeless classic, an anthem of sorts. Its original rendition, entitled "I'll Overcome Someday," was written by the Reverend Charles Albert Tindley, a black Philadelphia preacher, and published in 1901. It became the anthem of Allied workers, the Allied Workers Union strike in 1945. The workers, many of them who were black women, would sing the song at the end of each protest. In 1960, at the founding convention of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee in Raleigh, North Carolina, the song became a hit and began to be sang and performed at rallies, protests, and marches across the nation. And although the song is encouraging, to say the least, one has to ask, or maybe this is just what I happen to ask myself, have we really overcome? And what exactly have we overcome, if we have? Furthermore, why is it that we only hear this song once a year? Anybody ever notice that? You don't hear this song in December. You don't hear this song for the 4th of July. You hear this song in between King Day and February 28th. And so you have to ask yourself, have we really overcome? "Fight the Power" was written in 1989 for Spike Lee's critically acclaimed film, Do the Right Thing, and patterned after the Isley Brothers tune of the same name. It was performed by the most incredible Chuck D, Flavor Flav, Terminator X, and the collective known as Public Enemy. "Fight the Power" became somewhat of a war cry for struggling blacks. But "Fight the Power" is not about fighting authority. It's about fighting the abuse of power, similar to the rhetoric of Black Lives Matter. And "Fight the Power," of course, was a hip-hop song. I, being a hip-hop connoisseur, would like to take just a few moments in defense of the art form known as hip-hop. Hip-hop is an American product. Its true artists use the art as a weapon in the struggle for freedom and humanity. Unfortunately, hip-hop exhibits much of what's wrong with Americans' values. Contemporary and historical issues like hypermasculinity, violence, illegal activity, drug trafficking, misogyny, these are all prevalent in hip-hop. But it's important to note, and I make a lot of people mad when I say this, but that's cool with me. It's important to note that everything that's wrong with hip-hop was first wrong with America. Think about it. You look at a circa date for hip-hop music, 1973. 1520 Sedgwick Avenue, 1973, in the Bronx, New York, a guy by the name of DJ Kool Herc became the father of hip-hop. And if my historical analysis serves me correctly, violence existed in America long before 1973. Misogyny existed in America long before 1973. Women haven't even had the right to vote for 100 years. It existed longer in America than before 1973. Capitalism in this country? Really? That existed long before 1973. And so the point here is not to defend the ugliness in hip hop, but rather to shift the narrative to the original purveyor of that ugliness. And I think people are guilty of paying a little bit too much attention to the expletive and not enough attention to the narrative. So we hear the curse words. We hear those things that degrade our community. We don't pay enough attention to the stories behind them. Now, I will say this. I think that hip hop can be just as powerful as it is without degrading our women and without talking about illegal activity, most of which the MCs today haven't even done. They're just talking about it. And I'm going to tell you like this. I don't care how many records you sold. I don't care how much you make it rain in the club. I got 3 girls. You call one of them out their names. Say something about them. I'll show you who the real gangster is. Hip-hop cannot be a scapegoat for problems that are historically embedded into the American value system. And so as we see 2 different songs, 2 different narratives, 2 different movements, the connection in each movement is the music's ability to provide an artistic voice to the struggle. Both songs, We Shall Overcome and Fight the Power, in songs like those, speak to the fight against dehumanization. To overcome means to succeed in dealing with a problem or difficulty, to prevail, to win. But the only way to overcome is to first fight the power. So as I get ready to go to my seat, I'll say this. Although there are persistent differences between the civil rights movement and the Black Lives Matter movement, there are consistent themes of humanity and empowerment. And as we move forward into an election year, and this is an election year, by the way, there will most likely be more moments that raise our awareness, more moments that raise our consciousness. However, it is only when each of us is willing to connect to a movement, whatever that cause may be, that real change can occur. Now, I'd like to leave you with one question, one thought, and one quote. One question, one thought, and one quote. The question is this: what does progress look like to you? What does progress look like to you? How do you know it when you see it? Does it require that the marginalized accept mainstream norms? Does it require that you dress different, look different, eat different, talk different, and act different? Does it mean that we have one black president but 44 white presidents? What does progress look like to you? And the reason I think this is important for you to ask not only yourself, but your institutions, your organizations, the places where you belong, your families, your homes, is because if we don't define progress for ourselves, then we'll walk based upon someone else's progress for the rest of our lives. We'll raise our kids based upon someone else's idea of progress for the rest of our lives. What does progress look like to you? My thought is, don't engage in the contestation of humanity. Don't engage in the contestation of humanity. You see, when we see some of the events that have taken place in our world, what amazes me is that some people have the nerve to have a discussion about whether or not those people should have died. And so we hear people say things like, well, if Michael Brown wouldn't have robbed the store, he wouldn't have died. Well, if Sandra Bland would have just shut her mouth, she wouldn't have died. Well, if so on and so forth, those people wouldn't have died. Well, you know what? That goes back to the politics of respectability. And I don't like when people say things like that, because what it means is that if we cease to see the real narrative, then we lose the actual cause of the movement. And so sure, Michael Brown shouldn't have robbed the store. I'm not advocating for that. And Sandra Bland, I probably wouldn't have said some of the things that she said to the police officer either. But none of those people should have died as a result. I don't want my 10-year-old boy outside playing with a gun in the park either. But it doesn't mean he should lose his life because of it. And so we have to stop engaging in the contestation of humanity, the discussion of whether or not a person's humanity was worth being laid down for. And finally, my quote comes from Dr. King. Once again, in his speech, The Three Evils of Society, he closes that speech with the following quote. King said, "Cowardice asks the question, is it safe? Expediency asks the question, is it politic? Vanity asks the question, is it popular? But conscience asks the question, is it right? On some positions, it is necessary for the moral individual to take a stand that is neither safe, nor political, nor popular, but he must do it because it is right." So my brothers and my sisters, I close where I began. Don't just connect to a moment, commit to a movement. Don't just connect to a moment, commit to a movement. And when you do, don't just do it because it's safe. Don't just do it because it's political. Don't just do it because it's popular. Do it because it's right. You've been kind to listen, and for that I say thank you. Thank you. Thank you, man. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you.
I guess Kevin Hart was in line when he said you was gonna learn today. Mr. Daniels, that was deep, that was raw, and refreshing and needed. And I'd just like for y'all, I know y'all tired of this, and I'm pretty sure y'all hands hurt, but I need y'all to give us another round of applause for Mr. Daniels.
Thank you.
Nah, I ain't gonna say that's the last time y'all gonna do that because I ain't making no promises. All right? I would like us to do one more thanks because I also do shout-outs too, Mr. Dan. You ain't the only one I do shout-outs to. All right? Let's give a shout-out to our performers, Rebecca Evans, also Mr. Daniel Scott Bierman, and we also got Charlotte and myself, and also the people that we work for, Ms. Dasha Howard, Sarah Tweedale, Cecil Youngblood, unfortunately, who's not here today. Again, we'd like to thank y'all for coming out. Even though it's cold outside, we really appreciate you, but we also would like to just let you know about some upcoming events after this wonderful conversation we just had. All right? On Wednesday, we have our African American expression of culture through music. It will be a read aloud in Java Joint on Wednesday at 8 o'clock to 10:30. Be there. We got a couple performers, a few alumni. It's going to be really dope. I really want y'all to come out, enjoy yourself. Everybody's welcome to come. You know, you don't got to pay anything like that. Just show your face and just come hear the words of our students. Also, Friday, we'll be doing a service day alongside we're doing a screening of Selma the film. It'll be Wilson Theater. The film will be in Wilson's Theater. All right. The time has yet to been posted, but you guys, you can look for that later on. And also service day, that'll be around lunchtime. We'll be working with Regina Hendricks over there. We appreciate you. All right. We also got some special treats coming up for y'all in February. I'm going to let my co-host talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so as you all know, the month of February is Black History Month, and so this month the Office of Intercultural Affairs will be putting on a series of events around the theme of, I forgot the theme, honoring yesterday's history with tomorrow's actions. So stay tuned for more. We are figuring out the final events that we will be having, but we are looking to have a lot of community involvement in these events. So we will be getting in touch with all of you very soon, and people who live on this campus, you will know already too. So we hope to see you guys in the coming months, and give yourselves all a round of applause for coming out today and being cold. Okay.
Also, you guys should sign up for Sustained Dialogue. Y'all can hit up Sarah Tweedale about that. It's something that's really engaging. You guys will love it. And then having this conversation with Mr. Rick Daniels, it'll be something great to bring up in those conversations. Once again, we would like to thank you guys for coming out, and I hope you guys stay warm. Thank you so much. Y'all have a nice night.
Good job, Teddy. We did this.
We did good.
Good.
We can't hear everybody hearing us on the mic saying we did good.